Welcome to the Wooper Club League Season 11, Week 3 Power Rankings. Almost halfway through the season already. Can you believe it? I am your IllLogic, coach of the Buffalo Bouffant. As always, I am joined by Steve, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hey, everybody.
And as always, we are going to get right into some of the matches that happened. First off, though, as promised, we have to go over the last match from Week 2. The Troopers picking up their second win this season, a 3-0 victory over the Burbs. In the beginning, there was Toxapex, and surely at the end, it will be there too. Get up the early T-Spikes. Boots looking a little sparse on the side of the Burbs. Those T-Spikes putting in work. Trick Room Runerigus does trade with Delmice, but the Trick Room threat on the Troopers is down. But Celesteela is doing its Leech Seed thing, which goes real nicely with those Toxic Spikes. Click and Protect a few times to stall it out, along with the Pex. It really is the Bamboozler. Ooh, is that a way out? A freeze? No, an immediate thaw out, and Glaceon succumbs to poison first. Latios has a Tailwind and trades with the Raikou, the Tailwind benefiting the Obstagoon to get a KO, only to be revenged by Extreme Speed. D-Dance Dragonite is out now. You know what happens from here. Eat a couple hits, get a couple KOs, and even with a team dangerously low in health, the Troopers don't mind the early trades when D-Knight outtrades everything. A 3-0 win, and yes, Toxapex is still here. Next up, though, the Week 3 matches. The Agrons trying to remain undefeated themselves against the Masters of Rain, the Kanto Kinglers. This was a 4-0 victory from the Agrons, though it looked pretty dicey early. 2 electric types against no ground types brought from the Agrons, and Kingdra is out early to land an Ice Beam on the Tangrowth to Draco down the Dragalg. Regenerator Tangrowth is pretty good. It trades evenly with a Magnezone. He gets the Vaporeon in against a good target to at least heal status. Tabu Koko, nice stay-in on a Scarflander, switch click to knock off instead of Earthquake, so Skarmory is able to get up the rocks and chip one of the electrics heavily. Vaporeon continues to wall the Rain Mons. It heals up Dragalge as well, which has a thunderous surprise for Pelipper. Vaporeon heals up against the Kingdra on the last turns of Rain, KOing with Flip Turn, surprisingly. A poor switch to the zone gets that KO'd too by Body Press, and the Kinglers' Kingler gets another chance to KO. It actually takes out the Skarm. The trade war, though, from here goes to the Agrons. Tangrowth gets Kingler, Lando gets Vaporeon, but for the second week in a row, Crawdaunt can clean up the Agrons. A surprising 3-0 so far this season. We're back with the Troopers again, facing the Lairon in the match of the week. You can tell it was a good one from the 2-0 scoreline. Registeel starts out by out-trading Claydol as you'd expect from literally anything, but both sides do get up their rocks. An early Arctozolt switch into Celesteela Flamethrower. You hate to see that, but you do love to see the follow-up Claydol sack. Accelerock finishes off the first Hail Sweeper. As we see Registeel's full set, we'll remember that later. Celesteela does Leech Seed things until it burns the Nidoking. Then a great prediction, Earth powering the Pex switch in, but even that doesn't OHKO. You already know Pex survives that. T-Bolt the D-Knight, though, a couple times. D-Knight actually goes down without doing a thing. Is there an upset in the works? Ninetales sacked for one last run, this time with Beartics, which can also not KO the Pex after it swaps out, but eventually the bunker runs out, and it's down 2. A risky revenge option. Gengar Focus Blasts and is Scarf, so Celesteela will then have to be the follow-up sack and goes down to Hex. It's a very close one. Lycanroc actually gets an OHKO on Dragapult with Sucker Punch. What are you doing? That's kind of a big deal because now what are the Gengar answers? Registeel can't touch it. The swap into Gengar is inevitable, and even the PP stalling won't have to answer this one. And we got 13 consecutive Shadow Balls. Eventually, Registeel goes down, and no Sucker Punch on Nidoking. That's a 2-0 for the Troopers, another surprising undefeated team. Next, we've got the Bouffalant and the Boulders. Not even in the right order there. Scoring off for the first time, the Bouffalant grabbing a 4-0 win. Early on, we see Swords Dance, Rillaboom swap into Grassy Seed, Stockpile Hippo. Come on, Sazbo, you wouldn't do that to me, right? Taunt from Torn stops the Hippo, and now it's Feeney's turn to set up. It takes a couple turns, but Mantine defogs because it, unlike us, knows what terrain does and gets Toxic off to get the timer on Feeney. Eat a couple hits with that in the Arcanine, and that's down. Next setup, Sweeper up. It's obviously Liepard with Home Claws, which takes out the Mantine. Hurricane hits. Confusion. Hurt Self. Liepard down. Next setup mod. Blacephalon down to 1. Flame Charge. Rocky Helmet KO. Rillaboom back. Hurricane hits that. U-turn. Another Helmet KO. That's 3 indirect KOs and 3 turns for the Torn. But the real threat is here. Hawlucha SD's in the face of a missed Hurricane. Another Swords Dance wins it for the Boulders despite everything. But the Hurricane hits the sub. Heat Wave to consistently break it. Torn goes down. That's the MVP down. Now what? Swampert clicks Roar. That's what Kartana cleans up. That's the 4-0 game. Next, the Close Combat Club trying to stay undefeated too, but oof, they run into the wall known as the Noctowls, a 6-0 sweep. The Togedemaru match, Got good rocks from Komodo early. Slow King can tank everything. Do I really need to keep going? That's pretty much the game there. Okay, fine. The switching games were real early. Lots of U-turns, lots of teleport, lots of hard switches around, good reads from all the way around. Eventually, Weavile pressures the Corviknight enough to take it down after a couple knockoffs at Triple Axle. Slow King just keeps coming in on the Psychic types, which lets Weavile in from teleport. Knock off the Blaziken, Scarf next. Komodo tanks the Blaziken. It's starting to get ugly. The Fire Savali getting chipped by rocks and walled by Komodo. Blissey not finding a way in, only to get one shot by Body Press. Slow King still walls the Psychics, but at the end, instead of Weavile, it's Diggersby's time to shine. It KOs the Blaziken, survives the Scarf Lele attack, takes that down, takes down the Latios, plus the Savali, and it's 4 KOs for the Rabbit out of the 6 in the match, all going the way of the Noctowls. Next up, the Wobbuffets and the Burbs having very different seasons, but with the unexpected result, the Burbs topple the Wobbuffets 4-0. Early right light screen, Magma Storm missed, not the start you want to see. Pharaoh Walls, Milotic, Latias easily able to get up more light screens. We're dancing between a few mons, and there's Walls. Necro and Milotic just healing up. Rocks going down from Pharaoh as Thundy removes them until suddenly it cannot. Primarina, Scarf Moonblast, crit. Down goes Thundy. There's an opening now. I'm not stuck in here with you. You're trapped in here with me, Necro, trapped by Magma Storm, but Earth Power still does all of Heatran's health. Suddenly the tides are turning. Staying in, a good prediction on Bulu to trade evenly with it. Bulu KOing itself with Woodhammer. Primarina wearing 2 items apparently. Another crit going into Milotic with Energy Ball for the KO. Then Latias, noted Haxorus check defensively, swaps in on CC and gets a Reflect. Then perfectly times a Draco or 2 to take out the Haxorus. It's revenge too, but with only Terrakion left, Runerigus cleans up with ease a relatively smooth looking 4-0. Next, a couple of 1-1 teams looking to take the next step. It's the Steamrollers who emerge victorious over the Incineroar 3-0. We've got the switch game early, Lando getting poisoned and Gastro being a tank, with Chansey and Clefable swapping back and forth for the Incin. Getting rid of Steelix's item early looks important for Regieleki. Then Chad blows an opportunity he makes. Keldeo in Hydro Pump instead of the safer Scald. It misses the Alakazam switch in, which means he needs to go to Scizor. A couple of Spadef drops later in there, both very low. Then Chad makes a great ballsy play, staying in his Alakazam, switches to Roost Up. Rotom clears hazards, and we're back to the same old game. Clef switches in on a Scald from Keldeo. It can survive another one, but not the follow-up Hydro Pump. Finally, the first KO. Salamence does a ton of damage to Gastro after their Dragon Dance, but Clear Smog at least clears that out first. Steelix is still the answer to Alecki, and it forces out Moltres straight into a Head Smash. Really nice play there, but the parting gift is a Flame Body Burn. Speaking of, Keldeo is going to nail Salamence with the Scald Burn after starting to wear that down too. Lando gets up rocks but goes down to Overheat. The Incineroar up 5-3, but this positioning war looks like it might be to the Steamrollers. Salamence goes down to Keldeo, as does Chansey. Scizor skillfully dodges Focus Blast, and Alecki actually gets the Rotom KO with Steelix still left in the back. From here, Scizor SDs a few times. Steelix does minimum damage, and a couple hits clean up this, plus the Alakazam. An impressive endgame. That's the Steamrollers the win. Finally, it's the Psyducks and the Rockruff. The Rockruff get their first win of the season with impressive 5-0 showing. Scarf Flagon does not EQ like Narc turn 1, which lets him get lots of damage into the Urshifu early. A couple smart doubles, looking at going into Cinderace on some wishes. The positioning war is looking pretty even. Umbreon wishing things up, but that's only going to last so long. Glowking gets parried, then Garchomp trades out perfectly with the Metagross with the help from Future Sight. That was the only thing standing in the way of the real hero of the match. Sylveon, after a few switches, it gets in on Umbreon, Calm Mind's up, and before a Wish can heal up the Comfey that's gotten chipped, Hyper Voice takes that out too. A couple more Calm Minds, a couple more U-turns and missed moves from the Psyducks later, maybe a Wish or two sprinkled in, and it's sweeping time. The Rockruff finally get the luck on their side this time, Hurricane and Stone Edge missing, and Sylveon picks up 5 KOs to give them the W. And that is a quick rundown of what we got to see in Week 3. No trades this time to go over, Steve, so we get to hop right into the power rankings. And here we go, list from top to bottom. Steve, we're down to 2 undefeated teams, but there were 4 at the beginning of the season. These are not the 2 teams we expected to be undefeated either.
No, these are definitely not. A lot of the teams we expected to be undefeated are sitting in the middle of the pack, and we're kind of looking here at these 2 surprise teams. A team, the Wooper Troopers, their first time in the league, and the Agrons, a staple of the league that have always kind of been around the middle-ish, but, coming out and showing that regular season power that they have shown from time to time and really dominating right now. Excited to see if both of these teams can keep it up for the rest of the season.
Yeah, so let's go over the Agrons first. They had a 4-0 win against the Kinglers. I mentioned it at the beginning there. The beginning of this match really did not look very good. He was getting chipped down and didn't bring any of his grounds against 2 electrics, but really able to pull it out. That's mostly, I think, the power of that Vaporeon and really smart switching from the Agrons.
Yeah, he also leaned a lot on the Tangrowth, although it did take a big chunk from an Ice Beam early, but really relying on the kind of bulkiness of it, especially with the Assault Vest as an answer to the electric types, switching it in and out, and getting that defensive utility from that as well.
Yeah, we did see things like Magzone kind of being able to fight back with something like Iron Defense, but even then, Earthquake still does a lot. And as you said, Assault Vest means it's really not doing that much back, even Body Press, because of the naturally high defense. We didn't see that come out either. So even though he couldn't stop any Volt switching shenanigans, he still was able to punish pretty well. And again, got some really nice switches into Vaporeon, which did a great job of walling, especially the Pelipper and the Kingler. And it was really just a couple of surprise hits. I really loved the Thunder and Dragalge. I'd love to see that one shine a little bit. I'm glad he was able to make that work after wishing it back up and midway through the game.
Yeah, I know Dragalge, is thought of more as a special wall. Does have, adaptability for those strong poison and dragon moves, but does have a very usable special attack stack for coverage moves and, decent move pool. Able to bring out, that surprise Thunder against the Rain team. Great choice. Very much know that this battle will take place very often in the Rain. I know during the battle, Joey mentioned, it was disappointing that the first KO was the Pelipper because Thunder's utility went way down after that. Still a great move into the team, just at this point a little inaccurate.
And another great move into the team, that Aqua Jet really got opened up as well once the Kingdra got low and once the Pelipper was down as well. Second week in a row, Crawdont really coming through with the priority Aqua Jet. Is that going to be the answer to some of the speed woes that we have seen? We didn't even get to see Victini come to this match because of all the rain, but maybe things like priority and all that bulk is going to make up for it?
It's been working for him so far. He's playing a very strong defensive style, great switches, pivoting, taking advantage where he can. Getting lots of chip on the team, and then these past 2 weeks relying on Crawdon at the end to sweep. Something he is probably going to come to rely on a little bit. It'll be interesting to see in future weeks if he still is relying on it or it was something specific about these two matchups. But it works really well with his team, being able to break everything down and then clean up at the end.
And speaking of that, we got to go to the Troopers. We're going to talk about their Week 2 match here first. We did kind of get to see a little bit of that, some of the breaking down their good identification, knowing that getting the T-spikes up turn 1 was so invaluable. Just so long as you stop defog coming from Latias, the T-spikes, even just one layer along with Protect, really did put in a lot of work against the Burbs this match.
There was so much of it. It was so great to see that one T-spike there poisoning everything on the switch-in, and then, the defensive core of Celesteela and Toxapex going back and forth, using Protect, Celesteela occasionally getting up Leech Seed on unfavorable matchups that cause switches. Just all the stalling and the passive damage being put on the Burbs. There really wasn't much need for a ton of offense. A couple Mons picking up some damage throughout is all that was needed, and the rest was handled just by the defensive duo that just sat there and didn't die.
I think this also shows a big difference between regular poison and toxic. I generally like toxic to be able to break down a big old wall that wants to sit there forever. You really don't need the second layer of toxic spikes, though, against a team like this, where the recovery is a little bit sparse. You just want to wear it down a little bit at a time. Of course, it takes 3 turns of toxic to be able to equal 3 turns of regular poison. So even if they're only sitting out there for a turn of 2, which you can get pretty easily from Protect before they switch out, then that's probably actually a little bit more efficient of a choice, not wanting to sit there and get too much up there. And as you said, all you need to do is trade early, get your one big offensive piece in late, and the Toxapex and Celesteela can trade early with just about anything, even the electric coverage coming out from the Burbs.
Yeah. They were able to take some key hits and were able to hang on barely and, keep on doing what they need to do. And, even against an unfavorable matchup like Zeraora, if they're both sent out at the same time, Zeraora takes 1 turn of Toxic on the first Protect, does good damage, but likely not picking up a KO. Maybe in that turn, the Celesteela gets Leech Seed on it, so, then got another turn of Leech Seed and Toxic Chip or Poison Chip, and then a follow-up Protect and more turns of Chip. And, Zeraora is done at that point. Most of the health, but has lost, 50% of his health trying to break through this wall, and that's not even accounting for the ability to switch into some other piece to better resist the damage. So, great play, and, Samantha's really playing to it very well.
And then we kind of got to see the opposite as well with the Week 3 match. This one where the big 3 really couldn't stand up to the gigantic amount of pressure that was being applied by the Hail Sweepers, plus a really good Nidoking and a Dragapult. This was Match of the Week for a reason. It was really good. Very interesting to see Dragonite go down with doing anything, and all that Toxapex and Celesteela could really do was Celesteela getting a little bit of chip, and then trying to stall out turns of things like Hail, and then sacking themselves to get in the real big hitters, things like Gengar.
Yeah, definitely relying on a different set of mons here. You mentioned the Dragonite sack. I'm not sure if that was a conscious decision or hoping to hit like an Earth Power on the switch in so that there was some resist there. But did decide to keep the Dragonite in and lose it rather than trying to make another prediction and risk losing something like the Lycanroc or Gengar or the defensive core early. So a conscious decision there, but really made things look quite difficult early on, losing a couple of those. Losing Dragonite, the other early mon loss was Claydol, which I know you're a big fan of saying that's not quite a loss. That's just par for the course.
And yet it is the only electric immunity on the team, and even resist on this squad of 6 that we had seen this time, so there's a lot of pressure for something that just can't really handle that. Maybe we're starting to see a few cracks. The Alaron are 0-3, but this was actually quite a good showing from them. Probably a little bit of recognition at the end of the Gengar, and the threat that posed to them would have gone a long way. But even just bringing Scarf Gengar, I think, was a just very good call in the matchup overall here. And Lycanroc picking up some very key KOs, too, with the priority.
Yeah. The Accel Rock, always great. And then Sucker Punch, too, just one-hit KOing the Dragapult there. I'm curious if it's banded. I don't recall if we saw or I haven't watched the match of the week yet, which delves into these teams. But that much damage really suggests something like that was able to clean up so much there.
Yeah, so these are our top 2 teams in terms of record, and we also decided to put them as the top 2 in power rankings as well, Steve. Why did we decide to put the Agrons first, and why did we think that these 2 teams, undefeated, do still deserve to be 1 and 2?
So we gave the Agrons a slight edge due to some historical significance, as well as also the schedule they've faced so far. Both of these teams have had games against very similar teams, actually. They both have defeated the Route 1 Burbs, and they both have beat the Kinglers, I believe. So it was a difference between their other matchup, this match against the Lairon and the Psyducks for the Agron. Just based on those 2 opponents and the differential historical preference, we gave the slight edge here to the Agron. And then as for, the 2-1 teams, there's a lot of teams here at 2-1 that, are historically strong, but they've all shown a little bit of weakness this season. Whether it be, close losses to other 2-1 teams or, getting demolished by teams, barely making the list. None of them really did enough to outdo, 3 wins in a row.
Speaking of, we should hop into those teams. 3 through 7 are all 2-1. It was very tough to order these, particularly I think 3, 4, and 5. We had a lot of discussion, but we are going to start off at the top there with my Boufflant, a 4-0 win over the Boulders. 6 setup mons, Steve, and this is coming a week after you brought 4 setup mons plus a screen user plus Rock's suicide lead as well. Maybe the rest of you can fill me in. Is this the new strategy for the Boufflant?
It's hard to say. I know with my team in particular that seemed ideal. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at it. It worked. It did barely work there. You have a very defensive team, and sometimes you just look at the matchup and say, I can't win a long drawn out battle against this. I guess I just have to break through early. It worked out for me. Here for the Boulders, committing even further to that idea, it did not. You were able to switch around and handle the various setup sweepers as they came out, wall attacks, force them out, KO them, whatever it took to, secure a very nice 4-0 victory.
This is why I really love that Tornadus, too, being so fast, faster than anything that says go ahead naturally, and being able to taunt the Hippo, threatening taunts on various other things, even just pairing it up with the helmet for just a little bit more damage in addition to the defensive utility. I took out 3 mons in a row, even with a little bit of luck getting a confusion on the Lipard, and then following that up with a couple of very nice helmet KOs. But Tornadus finally was able to show some of the versatility that made it, I think, worthy of my first-round pick. Still waiting on potentially a couple of those other pieces, but it was really nice to see a top-tier mon really compete there quite well for me, so thank goodness for that thing.
Yeah. Of course, in your first 2 weeks, the top-tier mons really didn't do much. The 3 mons that you spent most of your points on, and then filling out the rest of your team with those low to mid-tier mons. Of course, in this matchup, we did not see the Hydreigon come. Kartana at the end was able to clean up quite nicely. So, the mons that are coming now, we're starting to see them put in work, whether that's better matchups for them, less prep for them from the opponent, or just, figuring out how to play them and, starting to get used to them and use them effectively.
Speaking of, I think that's exactly what we're starting to see from the number 4 team, the Newport Noctowls, who really only moved up one spot, I believe. But wow, this was a very impressive win for them against a previously undefeated close combat team. Just absolutely clinical in the way they were able to maneuver around, even utilizing the Togedemaru quite well, scouting for items incredibly effectively. It looks like he just read the close combat club like an open book all game.
Yeah. This was a very one-sided battle, having great defensive answers, knowing the physically defensive Komodo could handle any of the physical attackers, seeing that the Slowking could handle any of the special attackers. You mentioned the psychic types in the recap. Continually switching in, taking definitely the stab psychics and also the other stabs. The Draco Meteor doing 50% with Regenerator, able to keep relatively healthy from that, able to take attacks from the Lele as well with the Moonblast. Just a great mon, able to come in, and every time that came in and took us, one of those moves, able to teleport out, bring in Weavile for free, who was able to threaten those psychic types back out, outspeeding them, and able to quickly break through, the defensive check to it in Corviknight. And once Corviknight was down, Weavile just great mon of the matchup. I would have probably liked to see Silvally come in against it a little more, able to take knockoffs well because it can't lose its item, resist the ice moves. But instead, John went for the Corviknight and ended up losing that pretty early.
Definitely agree with that, you too. It would have been nice to try and get a defog off a little earlier as well. Those rocks stayed up all match, really dug into this volley. I like the fire typing idea for sure. As you said, it makes it a much better Weavile check. It makes so it's not going to be burned and actually checks the Volcarona quite well as well in one mon, while also potentially threatening a lot of damage onto the Togedemaru. But you know what the answers are, you know what the responses are, and hopefully you'll be able to pivot around appropriately, or even just getting a U-turn off to get the momentum back on your side from instead of what the teleports were doing. It seemed like he was stopping to drop a few psychic moves a little too often and then getting punished for it with some suboptimal switches around. From Jimmy, we didn't even get to see the Volcarona come out, which was very impressive. The Komodo finally showing some of its defensive profile as well, being able to tank the couple of fire types quite well. A very complete match from the Noctowls, and this is kind of what we were looking for from the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I'm glad to. I've played them already and got to see them before that was all put together. But finally figuring out the team, getting the pivots down, getting the offense down. Using new mons here, the Diggersby, which they hadn't used yet, coming in with the Scarf Body Slam, just wrecking havoc at the end. Another coach, knows what their win condition is able to remove the threats in their way, and then at the end come in and click buttons.
And then we get to move on to the match I know you're most excited to talk about, which was the Burbs beating the Wobbuffets here 4-0. Burbs had a kind of a rough go at it at the beginning here. The coaches that they faced are the currently 1, 2, and 5 teams, and if they haven't played the Burbs, they're 6-0 overall. The Burbs finally able to put something together here against what was a previously our number 1 team. That was you, Steve.
Yeah, they certainly did. They made a lot of great predictions throughout the matches. Got a couple RNG breaks, and great team prep for what I had, and was able to wall it very effectively.
Yeah, some of these switching around, we know that you were each able to find kind of the appropriate answers to each other. I mentioned the Melodic was able to heal up when it needed to. The Necrozma was able to heal up when it needed to. I really liked how he used the Necrozma. We talked a little bit before how after Magma Storm missed, you're able to kind of scout out if it had Earth Power, and then later, whenever you thought, it's probably safe this turn, or he's going to read the Protect to heal up, that's when he was able to use Earth Power, so great prediction there. A couple of times where he was able to swap in big resists on close combats that were probably intended to take out something like the Ferrothorn. Those stay-ins were excellent as well. The 2 Psychic types did go down, but boy, did they put in a whole lot of work with the prediction game there for sure.
Yeah, definitely put in a lot of work, and my lack of Dark and Ghost offense really showed up here. They looked great into the matchup and really don't have anyone to really take advantage of that. And as a result, didn't really get through as much as I wanted to. And those bulky psychic types really were difficult for my team. looking at the matchup too, like the Runerigus was also something I was terrified of because it just walled my main physical breakers so well, and it barely got a chance to do anything because the psychic types just handled everything so well.
And not to mention the pre being able to put in a lot of work there too. We will talk about the Route 1 Burbs a little bit later, as you can see on the list, but I want to kind of stop here in the rankings as well for now. We did have quite a bit of discussion about 3, 4, and 5 Bouffalant, Noctowls, Wobbuffets, and how to kind of maneuver these around. We feel like these are all just so close to each other, so neck and neck, all very similar portfolios so far through the season, and even historically, 3 very strong coaches. Steve, why did we decide to rank them 3 Bouffalant, 4 Noctowls, 5 Wobbuffets?
Well, from the start, this is also their preseason rankings in this order, just based on historical data. But besides that, you may look at this and think, hey, the Wobbuffets beat these other 2 teams. However, it is worth noting the Bouffalant's 1 loss is a very close, a little bit RNG loss to the Wobbuffets, which kind of gave them the little bit of the edge there. They also had been previously ranked higher and, had a very nice 4-0 win this week. So we didn't see enough to move anyone really ahead of them, notably. For the Noctowls here, a dominant 6-0 win this week. And, their loss also coming to the Wobbuffets, although this one was also one that was very close and, a couple of plays different could have made that a win for them. And then the Wobbuffets down here at 5 at the bottom of this group. Put myself down here just because of how bad this loss was to the Burbs. A team previously off the rankings, and they're having an off season, or maybe they just have a rough schedule to start. And this match was not close. It was a pretty bad match, and one I am happy to no longer have to talk about.
Yeah, I think the first 2 matches, you could say, well, you're a little lucky to get away with them, but I think really those first 2 matches you were able to get away with wins there because of your very good prediction game and able to kind of read the opponent quite well. And in this match, we're able to see pretty much the exact opposite, where you ended up getting read by the Burbs. So we hope it's not too bad of a downward trend, but probably enough to rank you just below these other 2. Bouffalant and Noctowls probably neck and neck. Good to say that maybe the Noctowls 6-0 was enough to move them ahead of the Bouffalant. But the Bouffalant were 3 last week. Not really sure if it was enough to move them down. We'll probably end up seeing in week 7 which one of these 2 is better once we get to face off each other, which could be a lot of fun. Now, we did hope to leave the Steamrollers off, but boy, we just cannot. This was a really fun match, the 3-0 victory from the Steamrollers over the Incineroar. We'd mentioned last time, too, these are 2 1-1 teams that are looking to get on the list. The winner had a pretty good shot of making it on, and with some other weak performances, Steamrollers, I think, did actually deserve this with some really nice pivoting and some good prediction game.
Yeah, they had a great match here, able to whittle down the entire opponent's team. Chad did put out a video on this match, which I have watched, and definitely informs my decisions here, but, goes down early, 3-5, but kind of gets the chip where he needs it so that his remaining 3 can break through the rest of the Incineroar team.
It ended up being a couple pretty good calls there. The Spidef Scizor was pretty necessary for the Alakazam, able to clean up late as well, even though you may see it and think this is here for something like Clefable if it doesn't have Flamethrower. It really ended up putting in a ton of work to be able to clean up most of the remaining Mons. These Steelix and Alakazam for sure needed to be cleaned up by this as well. Maybe a couple of curious plays from the Incineroar as well. I was a little surprised that up 4-3, again, staring down a Keldeo that he knows is not choice select, brought in the Chansey, that maybe could have put in a little work against something else, or could have at least provided a pivot into something like the Regieleki if you wanted to make a middle ground play, trying to save the Steelix or something like that. But it didn't really work out for them. Maybe we should just be giving a little more credit to Chad and how well the prep worked out for him, though.
Yeah. Worked out very well, playing everything well. You mentioned the Chansey misplay, things that could have gone the other way. But overall, Chad's pivoting, dealing with the Chansey early, although he wasn't able to break through it, able to do it eventually, and just, solid play, of course, except stacking fire types, which seems to be a little bit of a trend for Chad, which I hope to see continue.
We have the Steamrollers at 6, Close Combat Club, which we also talked about at 7. Steve, go a little bit into it for us as to why we put the Steamrollers ahead of the Close Combat Club, and why we think there's a gap between the Wobbuffets and these other 2 teams.
So the Steamrollers are trending up here at 2-1. They started 0-1 against the higher-ranked Bouffalant. and then have picked up 2 wins. The Close Combat Club on the other side started 2-0 and are now, trending down a little bit, especially after such a devastating 6-0 loss. It'll be interesting to see how, the club especially rebounds next week. But, and considering historical precedents as well, giving that edge to the Steamrollers. Regarding comparing to the top teams, there really hasn't been any interplay yet between them. The wins for the Steamrollers and the Close Combat Club are over other mid-tier teams. None of the historically top teams for the wins. The Close Combat Club did lose big to the historically strong Noctowls, but no key mark victories yet to really shoot them up. So once these teams get to play some of these other teams that are up here in the power rankings, we'll certainly see how they're able to move around.
And of course, we did have quite a discussion on the 1 and 2 teams that are there at the bottom. We didn't quite think any of them were enough to be able to surpass what the Steamrollers Close Combat Club have accomplished this season, but we did have quite a discussion about a couple of these teams, one of which, of course, was featured in the last match. We don't want to spend too much time on it, but the Rockruff were able to beat the Psyducks 5-0. That Sylveon really, it was just beautiful. We saw that the Metagross was the only answer to it, more than willing to trade the Garchomp for the Metagross, even if Metagross had the nice little Ice Punch there for it. The Earthquake damage, plus the Rough Skin, plus the Future Sight able to do that in, and that just opened the door for Sylveon, and ta-da, tight, and the Rockruff able to get their first win in the WCL.
Yeah, great recognition there, and Sylveon, coming in right away after Metagross being removed, doing what it can. Not able to, sweep at that point, but, key member from that point on, gets a little bit of RNG back from the terrible RNG to start the season, and, able to take this one home. It'll be exciting to see, the Rockruff continue and see if, those first 2 weeks were just the bad RNG that we all saw, or if there, was other things holding this team back.
So the Rockruff were one of the teams definitely had in discussion here. The Boulders as well, with just a couple of tough losses to real big teams. But in the end, we did choose the Burbs as the number 8 team to put on here, despite starting off the season 0-2. Steve, we talked a little bit about their luck with their schedule at the beginning of the season, but this was also just a really big win for them to hang their hat on, maybe compared to the other 2 teams. Tell us a little bit about why we put the Burbs ahead of the other 1 and 2 teams, particularly the Boulders and what we just talked about, the Rockruff.
So, of course, the Burbs having that big win over the higher-ranked Wobbuffets. That's the big thing. In addition, the Burbs have losses to currently, 3-0 teams in the Agrons and Troopers. And how these teams have performed so far, the Burbs having just a really rough schedule. That also means, looking forward, their schedule is a little bit easier with some better matchups coming up, making it likely they'll finish in that 3-4 or 4-3 range. So, a kind of brighter future than some of these other teams we were talking about. The Rockruff and Boulders both have a little bit tougher schedules coming on. The Rockruff, although they had some unfortunate RNG early, have matchups against the currently undefeated Agrons coming up. The Newport Noctowls, historically strong team. WCL Steamrollers, a historically strong team. The really tough schedule moving forward. Of course, if the Rockruff pick up some of these wins, that'll certainly catapult them up these rankings. But in the meantime, just looking forward, we really couldn't, give them this 8 seed as they have a tougher schedule moving forward. The Boulders, similar, have some tough matchups moving forward. Of course, they have the Wobbuffets coming up, which will be their 3rd week in a row playing the preseason ranked 1, 2, and 3 teams, as well as, a matchup still against the undefeated Troopers in week 6. So again, tougher schedule. The Boulders also have, just the win over the Incineroar, a team not on this list, with losses to some teams above them. Nothing really convincing us to put them in here. So we end up going with the Burbs, the team with the win against a higher ranked opponent.
And there's our top 8 for power rankings. Again, only 8 teams making the playoffs this season, and we are tracking that and our expectations for what we're seeing from week to week as the teams to watch, the teams to beat to make it to those playoff spots. So that's going to do it for this week. That means We got the middle week here, week 4, and here are some of the matches we've got going on. Steve, what are one or two of the matches that stand out to you, particularly in relation to getting some shuffling around in these power rankings?
Oh man, shuffling around the New Bryn Rockruff and the Akron Agrons will be quite an interesting one if it goes one way and not the other. A Rockruff win there would certainly shake things up, moving the Agrons down and Rockruff up. Another match that I find very interesting, maybe not so much for a shakeup, is the Bouffalant and Wooper Troopers. The Wooper Troopers have so far not faced any of the historically strong teams in the league. The Burbs kind of being a borderline team that they were able to beat, but, a decent one. But looking forward to, the Troopers' first opportunity to face the Bouffalant. I know they play the Wobbuffets the following week. So, trying to get a benchmark on this new coach's abilities against some of the traditionally stronger teams and see if it's, are they really this good, or they're just, have some good matchups early on.
And a couple that I will point out, of course, the Wobbuffets and the Boulders. We just left the Boulders off the list, and their biggest struggle, I think, has been against these top teams. They really haven't gotten a marquee win. This is something I had previously given to the Burbs as kind of their weakness before last season, able to get all those clutch wins and take it home. The Boulders need to show us something, and the Wobbuffets need to get back on track, so this is kind of a get-right game for either or both coaches here. That should be a lot of fun to see. A similar thing for the Close Combat Club and the Incineroar. If the Incineroar want to get back into it, this is exactly the week to do it against a Close Combat Club that may be down and out. And similarly, the Close Combat Club cannot continue to fall like this. A 6-0 defeat is pretty rough, but can be your chance to turn things around. So I think a big week for both of those coaches as well. So that's going to do it from us. That's the Week 3 Power Rankings and Summary. Join us again next week for Week 4. We're going to be more than halfway through already. We're getting closer to Scarlet and Violet. Hope you join us.